So my name is Ruby Asuncion Nebres Turalba-Khalil, and I would say that my first identity is as a mother, a daughter, granddaughter. I have a spouse of 20 plus years, and I am also an educator. Um, well, my parents came from La Union, Philippines. They immigrated in the 70s, um, right before Marcos declared martial law. I grew up in San Diego and then moved up to the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, for college. And it wasn't until the end of my college years that I started volunteering for PUSOD, which is the Center for Ecology, Community, and Bayan, I believe, in Berkeley at the time. And then also with FACES, Filipino American Coalition for Environmental Solidarity. But my first involvement in the South of Market was volunteering at the Veterans Equity Center. And that's when I worked with Jenny Batallones, and we worked on the oral history project, interviewing some of the manongs, and also transcribing their videos. So that was my first involvement. And then I would say that there was kind of like a big gap in terms of my Filipino community involvement as I became a parent. But then when my children started attending Bessie Carmichael, that's when I got very active in the SOMA community as a parent leader, part of PTA, part of the school site council, and then also working with families in support of the Filipino World Language and Elementary School program. I just think about and reflect on my own childhood experience going to schools in San Diego. I didn't really have an opportunity to learn anything about Filipino language, history, or culture in my schools. I felt like that experience caused a lot of harm and mental health issues growing up. And so when I had kids, I wanted a different experience for them. And actually for many, many years, our family homeschooled our kids because I wanted to be able to provide them with more education about who they are, and not necessarily learn only, for example, Eurocentric history and values. But that our homeschooling journey was not completely sustainable. And at some point, we decided to enroll our children in schools. And that's when I heard about the Filipino language program at Bessie Carmichael. I was very, very excited. And so both of the kids attended Bessie Carmichael. My son attended the Filipino language program as early as 3rd grade. And my daughter was enrolled in the middle school. And at that point, I was actually kind of disappointed once they started, because I thought that the Filipino language program was also within the middle school, but it was not. Thankfully, she still had a lot of exposure to Filipino teachers and staff and friends, and was also part of United Playaz. So she felt very rooted in community there. So my son, who was part of the Filipino language program, his first teacher was Tita Maggie de Guzman. In Tita Maggie's class, Malik had the opportunity to learn Filipino dance, not only just the language, but he had this great opportunity and he had lots of time to dance and have performances throughout the city. So he had performed at City Hall for Filipino American History Month. He also performed at the Asian Art Museum and then also at the School of Arts. What is that? SOTA, School of the Arts. So performing traditional Filipino dances. And I was just very proud of him. And I was proud to have that opportunity. But as a parent in his third grade class, I had lots of conversations with Tita Maggie. And that's when she kind of started teaching me and talking to me about the history of the Filipino language program and how that at some point, it actually began with the Filipino Education Center in the 70s, where there was a strong biliteracy program. And then over the years, with a lot of pushback, it has evolved into the WLES program, World Language in Elementary School, which is just 30 minutes a day. And the goal, I feel, of the World Language program is more about Filipino exposure and not necessarily language proficiency. So again, thinking about my own childhood experience and not having been taught Ilocano or Tagalog at home and not having that reflected also in my schools, I wanted something different for the kids, for my kids. I wanted them to feel rooted and grounded in their Filipino heritage. When I think about the importance of the World Language Program, I think about identity and knowing oneself and knowing one's roots. Again, thinking about my own experience, not having that solid foundation led to a lot of mental health issues. I've shared this multiple times, but I dropped out of high school, and I also was hospitalized 2 times for suicide ideation. And that is actually a huge problem amongst Filipino American adolescents. And so I also thought that the Filipino language program could be a great start for having our kids feel connected to who they are as Filipinos in the United States. So I do wear 2 hats, 3 hats, 4 hats. I teach public health at San Francisco State. I've been doing that for about 14 years. I love being in the classroom. I love being an educator. And so also being at Bessie Carmichael as a parent leader, I just have a lot of joy and yeah, it brings a lot of enjoyment. Getting into public health, I feel like for immigrant families, there's this high expectation for the children, maybe second generation Filipinos, to go into health-related fields because it's lucrative, it's successful. They're here for the American dream. They want the best for their kids. And so there was a lot of pressure for me to go into the medical care field, and yet I was pushed out. And again, back in my college years, I got exposed to public health, and I had the opportunity to learn that health is much more than just treating someone who's sick, and that it really is also about things like racism and equity, jobs, housing. And so public health came to me, right? And I fell in love with it. I'm also just finishing up my doctorate education at San Francisco State. It's been a really, really long and arduous journey. And I would also say that the focus of my dissertation and my community research looks at the Filipino language program. A great opportunity that I've had as an instructor at San Francisco State is partnering with SOMCAN, the South of Market Community Action Network. And we've worked on multiple community health projects that I am so proud of. I know that chronic diseases like overweight, obesity, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, stroke, those are the biggest things that take away our elders. And when I was working on this project with SOMCAN, Kalusugan ng Bayan, our health, our community, I remember just asking a big group of Filipinos to raise their hand if they know someone who's had one of those chronic conditions. And the majority of people in the room raised their hands. So it is a very serious issue. In terms of addressing that, I mean, health is so multidimensional, right? So we know that we need to eat right, we need to exercise, but that's not enough. We definitely need to change the built environment. We need to change our social conditions. So even something like thinking about providing more accessible, affordable foods that are culturally appropriate, that would be a great solution. Of course, having programs where our Filipino community can be active and be healthy and socialize together is important. And then also thinking even upstream and looking at jobs and housing is just as equally important. When I think about systemic issues facing the health of Filipinos in general, not necessarily the Bay Area, I think about the fact that Filipinos are still under-researched. And so for myself, I'm trying to bring that out into the public health discourse. Filipinos, whether it be in educational research or in public research, we're oftentimes aggregated within this larger Asian American, Pacific Islander racial category. And the data doesn't really tell you exactly what's happening with Filipinos, right? We can look at the data, for example, on educational outcomes, and it might look that as an Asian group, we're doing really, really well in terms of graduation rates or students test scores. But then for the few studies that are out there that are actually disaggregating the data, Filipinos experience higher rates of chronic conditions and then also the lower educational outcomes. So that's a big thing, right? We're definitely invisibilized within the Asian American, Pacific Islander racial category. So I think it's really important that students, families, and teachers continue to advocate and organize and support a Filipino language studies. The school district, as well as larger institutional factors, are always going to be trying to push it back and not see the value and not see the importance of it. And if we don't push back, it will get lost. It will get taken away. And so there's always going to have to be this constant struggle for again, the community to speak up and push for stronger Filipino language studies. And this could be the beginning of a larger movement throughout the United States, right? We have 2 here in San Francisco, and those are the 2 in the United States. And so we also know that there's there are many Filipino communities throughout the United States, and Bessie Carmichael's Filipino language program, which evolved out of the Filipino Education Center, could definitely be a model for others. When I think about knowing one's history, I think that can be beneficial to improving our health. And I think about even just 1 generation or 2 generations ago, the way my elders ate compared to my generation and the younger generation eating today, right? Again, this adopting of American values, norms, ideas, and that's not healthy for us, right? We need to go back to our gulay. The other thing I think about is how our American lifestyle really makes us busy. We are working so hard. Oftentimes, I think especially for families, both parents could be working. Both parents could be working 2 jobs. And so we don't have the time to prepare our healthy foods. It's an easier alternative to just pick up some fast food or buy some packaged ramen from the corner store and just make it, especially for busy parents who are working, who also are doing community work and attending meetings late at night. And so finding some balance is also important, right? I really want to give back to my community, but I also have to feel like I'm not so stretched that I can also give back to myself and my kids. I think making a difference is important. Building community, finding joy in community. I feel like those are things that get me out of bed in the morning. Knowing that the work that I do, either as an educator or as a parent leader, as a friend, as a family member, knowing that I can do something for others makes me feel like I have a sense of purpose in life.